Good morning, everyone. I'm Valérie FAUDON. I'm the Director General for the French Nuclear Society, and I'm really happy to welcome you to a webinar this morning called Nuclear and the EU Elections. With European elections scheduled to take place in the next few weeks, clean energy and nuclear in particular are on top of the agenda. So what is the current status of nuclear in the EU? What progress has been made during the last mandate, and what can we expect for the next mandate? I'm really honored to welcome Yves DESBAZEILLE, who's the Director General from Nucleareurope. So he will make us a presentation to answer these questions. And then, of course, we will open to the discussions and your questions, so you can start as soon as you want to. So to ask questions, you can see on top of your screen Saidu. So Saidu enables you to ask questions. So you can ask your questions, but you can also vote for existing questions. There are about 350 people registered to the webinar today. So please vote for questions. So because I will ask in priority the questions with the most votes. If you don't have Slido, what you can do is find a link with a web page in the conversation channel. So I'm very happy, as I said, to welcome Yves. So Yves, I give you the floor.
Thank you very much, Valérie. Welcome to all of you. So we are now a little bit more than 1 month ahead of the elections. Obviously, for nuclear, it means obviously some potential challenges, and we're going to discuss a bit about this. And then I will start without further ado to share my presentation. You're going to have the presentation. Can you see my screen? Yeah, I think so. Yeah, so this is basically a presentation that is with the objective of giving you a flavor of what's happening at European level. Obviously, there will be time for questions. I will try to be as brief as possible to have a conversation on questions you may have. So so very few reminders of what Nucleareurope is. So we are, I like to use a big word, lobby representing the nuclear industry, European nuclear industry, towards the EU institutions. So basically, it includes EU institutions per se, but obviously also, I would say, the Brussels bubble in general. So all the stakeholders. Because when we address the EU institution, we also have some efficiency if we address other players like think tanks, like other trade associations, like NGOs, and you name them. So this is basically our role. We are mostly a federation, so we are an association of national associations. So for instance, for France, we represent GFEN, but in other countries, we represent the National Forum. The membership is mainly EU countries, but we also have 3 non-EU countries we represent. So namely Nuclear Industry Association for UK, the Swiss Nuclear Forum for Switzerland, and the UNF, Ukrainian Nuclear Forum for Ukraine. And on top of that, we also have a few corporate members, which is a top number which is growing regularly. So we have some recent newcomers, like for instance, Naria Nucleo or the Polish OSGE. So basically, this is we tend to be a little bit more hybrid organization. So a few numbers on nuclear in Europe, and this is what we use usually as our business card. And those are very gross figures. Don't try to challenge exact numbers, but this is to give an order of magnitude of figures we're talking about. So we have more or less 100 reactors in the EU, and here it's not, so it's not including clearly the Brits or the Swiss or the Ukrainians, but the rest of the EU, strictly speaking. The total turnover is in the range of 100 billion euros at EU level, and we produce roughly 25% of electricity. So the figure tends to decrease a bit. So maybe this last year it was probably more in the range of 22, 23. This number tends to decrease with the final closure of the last German reactors. And then 1 million jobs, it includes direct, indirect, and induced jobs. So just to let you know, if you have some other figures at national level in mind. We also produce almost 50% of the clean electricity, low carbon electricity across Europe with different shades. Here you see different shades of blue. Obviously, the darker countries are the one with the highest share, like France, obviously, but also Czech Republic, Hungary, and also Slovakia are the other countries with a significant share. And also, so it doesn't include this later. This map is really EU and not EU, not Nucleareurope membership. So you don't have Ukraine, you don't have Switzerland or UK. But those are the usual figure we use. I don't think it surprises anybody in this webinar, but this is the situation. So I would say one word about the decarbonization challenge. I'm pretty sure many of you are already aware of the challenges at national level or maybe even at EU level, but I think it's important to remind what we are talking about. So this triangle is what we usually use and call the energy trilemma. Once again, maybe many of you are aware of this, but this is mainly to illustrate that we've seen a shift on this, on the priorities on this triangle lately. So we started the last, even the current commission, the von der Leyen Commission, with a very strong push on green and clean. The summit of the triangle representing this was very top of the objective and priorities of the von der Leyen Commission. But what happens in then is we have by I would say the reality of things much more pressure put on the issues of secure and reliable electricity or energy in general and affordability. So those two aspects have been, I would say, a little bit disregarded or not regarded with enough probably attention. And then it came back, those topics came back on the table lately, and I believe this will probably be the main emphasis of the next commission that we'll have to tackle. But I will tell more about that later. So those are this picture, which is a little bit packed, shows what we've came across over the time. So everybody has in mind the initial 2020 for 2020. It was so nice for politicians; they love it, and I would say, in a way, it proved to be successful. Things tend to be a little bit more difficult for 2030. So the initial target that came from the last commission, Juncker Commission, was minus 40% for 2030. But what happened is this figure was proved to be not enough, because in between, the objective of the EU as an economy was to get down to net zero in 2050. And to get down to net zero in 2050, you had to readjust intermediate figures, in particular the one on 2030, with minus 40 getting to minus 55. And then also came some objective on renewables. So mine is 45% development renewables, which is now the objective for 2030. And the 13% reduction for energy efficiency, but compared to 2020, not to 2019. So this is the numbers to be retained here. Maybe one last thing, which is, I believe, of importance, is the refusal of some countries like France to tackle any objective for renewables in 2030. And I think it's a little bit a shift in political positioning of some countries.
Yves, excusez-moi.
Yes.
Potentiellement, on est bloqué sur une slide où il y a marqué Nuclear Energy in the EU. Est-ce que vous pouvez recommencer le partage d'écran?
Oh, sorry, technical issue.
Est-ce que vous voulez sinon que je le fasse?
I see. So is this? This is the slide which was you last saw, right?
For the moment, it's all black.
Okay. I believe maybe the best is you share the slide, yeah, because I see my camera is also frozen. So apparently there is a problem on my computer. So we'll stop sharing.
Screen share. So this was the last slide.
I can't see on the screen. Are you sharing your screen?
Yeah, I can see on another computer, so it should be okay. Maybe the participants can tell us. They can see it now.
The issue is my screen is also frozen, so it doesn't help. You know what? I'm going to use my phone.
Okay. So we wait for you.
Yeah, sorry. I apologize for that. So can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. We can see you.
Okay, so I leave you share the presentation.
Yes. Do you see it here?
Then can you go to the next slide? Next. Yeah, so I'm not going to present this one again, but I explained the triangle and the energy trilemma. But then can you go to the next slide, please?
Yeah, sure.
And you can click more than one time, because you will see, yeah, the minus 55% objective in 2030 instead of minus 40. Can you click again, please? Yeah, and again. Yeah, so those basically what I was explaining for the 45% renewables in 2030, and the fact that this objective has not been acknowledged by some countries like France, which that say the only thing which is important for 2030 is the minus 55%. So it creates a bit of difficulties, political difficulties, And I saw not later than this morning that some NGOs were calling France to get back to some specific objective for renewables expansion for 2030. So I don't know how it's going to end up, but I believe this starts a bit a new era of positioning of countries that now consider that the importance, and I believe this should have been the case since the beginning, but saying that the only important metric is the decarbonization target. So moving ahead, please, next slide. Yeah, can you click again? Yes, so this picture shows what it means decarbonization, getting to net zero in 2050. And then in blue, this is power generation, electricity. And then it showed that on the screen that the power sector should be the first one to be fully decarbonized and to reach net zero in 2040. So it means that if you look at when we are today, it means that in 16 years from now, the power sector should be fully decarbonized if we want to meet this objective. So moving on, please. Yeah, this also concerns other applications than power. And here it's a quick illustration on the fact that, yes, we need to decarbonize power, but there are also other sectors that will have also to be decarbonized. And here we take the example, for me, it's very striking one, which is hydrogen. If you look at the Repower EU objective of the Commission for 2030, they have announced that we should go to produce 20 million ton hydrogen, and then they're talking about green hydrogen, not low carbon hydrogen, which is another issue. But this 20 million tons of hydrogen, if you translate it into the power you need to produce it via electrolysis, it's 1,000 terawatt-hour, or the equivalent of 125 reactors producing on full-time 24/7. And here we are 125, it's on top of what exists today. So you can imagine how unrealistic this objective is. All the more so that in the spirit of the Commission, this obviously is not going to be produced by nuclear, but produced by only renewables and also imported from some countries, like the Germans want to do. So it's basically, this target is impossible to be met. And then also other application, industrial heat. Another very significant figure of industrial heat that will have to be produced by low carbon energy. So can you move on, please? Yes, and I think this picture is well known by participants, so I will not comment it much more. Just to illustrate the two bars, the one which is the consumption, the specific emissions of the power sector in 2023, and the objective for 2030. And here you see that basically for 2030, only countries like France, Sweden, and Norway meet the target, and the other ones are very far from this target of 2030. So that's basically the situation, and it shows how difficult it is to get to the minus 55% in 2030. So moving on, because I'm aware of the time. So this picture is well known. I'm not going to comment much more. Just to remind that using different type of reactors, we can address also different needs beyond power. and particularly with advanced reactors and macro reactors among themselves are potential source of energy to produce other means of energy. So moving on, please. Yeah, so now I'm going to explain a bit the political context, and which is well known. I'm not going to comment much this map, maybe only to say that here we see some changes. So for now, and this picture still shows Italy as gray. And I was attending the G7 in Turin and Energy this week. And I can tell you, Italy is changing its mind, and it's changing it very significantly and very rapidly. So it couldn't surprise me that Italy would join the green camp at some point of time. They are already observers in the Nuclear Alliance, and they may cross the step for good at some point of time, and we shall see. Moving on, please. Yeah, those are examples of what's happening at national level. Once again, I'm not going to comment much on that, but you see that in many countries, there are some very positive changes towards nuclear. In some countries, the change is absolutely massive. For me, the typical example is Sweden. Sweden, where not a long time ago there was a moratorium on nuclear, and now they are developing a full-scale new build program, which is still relatively at an early stage, but they are very serious about building new reactors, including large and small reactors. And then you have other examples like Poland and others, but I don't think we have time to go into much details. Can you move on, please? The Nuclear Alliance I was mentioning before, they have had already a lot of meetings together, and you have the list here of countries. I was mentioning Italy as observer. I believe what is important here is to remind that they defined a declaration, a common declaration, whereas they intend to, or the commitment they make as a group is to get 150 gigawatt installed capacity in 2050. I think this is very important, and we'll see at the end if ever this objective materializes, but at least there is a common objective, and we have now a clear target, political target. So moving on, please. Yes, so this picture, this is the last declaration of the Nuclear Alliance. They have those declarations are very regular each time they meet. I think what is important here is to quickly highlight the fact that I believe the main targets, main objectives they have now is really to insist on financing issues, on skills, and the issue of scaling up the industry capabilities. I think those aspects are very important because, and those are matters that come back on the table each time, and this will serve as a basis for the next Commission's, I would say, the topics countries want the next Commission to tackle. Moving on, please. Yeah, can you click, because we will see what it, yeah. 150 gigawatt, once again, 150 gigawatts. So it will be a mix of long-term operation. So I think it's important to have this in mind. So if we want to have, so this here we have 35 gigawatts
of long-term operation. If we want to reach this number, it means that some reactors will have to operate for more than 60 years. This is not something which is today can be taken as granted, but this is one of the things we need to tackle as industry together with regulators. And we'll see how it goes, but this is one of the most important assumptions. The rest will be a mix of small modular reactors, large reactors, and advanced reactors. And at the end of the day, we'll have to commission a figure which is in the range of 120 gigawatt new installed capacity, a very significant number, which means that the mobilization of the industry will have to be absolutely essential. 120 gigawatt is more or less what was built in the 70s, 80s in Europe. So it means that we have to repeat this endeavor. So moving on, please. Yeah, this picture shows also that not only from member states and the Commission support, but also on the European Parliament, we see a lot of support lately. Those are the results of the vote of the initiative report on SMRs last December, and you see that 2/3 of the MEPs voted in favor of this report. Moving on, please. Yeah, so those are the last statements from different politicians. You will have the slide, I will not comment, but we see lately a lot of support from different commissioners, including the president of the Commission herself, Ursula von der Leyen. If you go to the next slide, it goes beyond. No, previous slide, please. Yes, this one. The French President, Mr. Macron, the new president of the EIB, and also the last G7 declaration, so adopted 2 days ago, which I believe is important to see that G7 obviously includes France and the UK for Europe, but also Germany and Italy. And I think this is this is the first time we see some form of support from Germany and Italy. I think clearly this tells also the change in. So moving on. Can you go to the next slide, please? No, no, it was the previous one, sorry. The time it takes to show it, yes. Yeah, I'm aware of the time, so I don't think we have much time to explain this in details, but if you look at the importance of the last slide, last files, which this commission dealt with, and the time, we saw growing support from the institutions in general and the Commission in particular on nuclear. And then particularly lately, we have the NZIA, so Net Zero Industrial Act. We're very positive, which is positive, both positive and important for us. Taxonomy, well known for a while already, but that came a little bit earlier. The SMR Industrial Alliance, and the electricity market reform are very important files where we see a very strong support for nuclear. So can you go to the next slide, please? Yes, so this year is a very important one because we have the elections, and I think we see something you know perfectly well. We see on the European Parliament potentially a strong push from conservative and extreme right parties. Greens seems to will probably lose influence in the Parliament. On the Commission, its side itself, it's very difficult for now to project ourselves, but We know that Commissioner President von der Leyen would like to run for another term. Will it be possible or not? It's still a pending question. I'm not sure her position is so comfortable, and we'll have to see exactly what will happen. Obviously, the very important fight for us is what's going to happen with who's going to take the portfolios of energy on climate. It will be an important thing to be followed. Can you go to the next slide, please? The next one. So yeah, so this is a summary of the message we have developed for the European Parliament, and together with our members. I don't think we have much time to comment on that. But as I was saying, industrial competitiveness, a question of affordability and energy poverty are absolutely essential topics to be which are treated by now for the candidates MEPs we are dealing with. Can you go to the next slide, please? Yeah, this one is fine. Yes, I think this is a picture that shows for us what will be the priorities of the next Commission in general on energy. Industrial competitiveness will be at the core of what the next Commission will have to deal with. There are plenty of signals that show that Europe is losing out compared to other economies, the US in particular, and this matter will have to be properly tackled. The rest are also, as I was saying, security of supply, affordability will be essential. We'll still have sustainability issue around, but with a lot of other part of the equation that will be of importance. And for industry, clearly the skills issue, supply chain issue will be absolutely important topic to be properly tackled. So moving on, please. Yeah, so that's basically what I was saying. We see a lot of positioning from politicians, particularly the ones who want to have a future either at national level or at Commission level. Most of the messages now are clearly to call for more, I would say, a better treatment of nuclear, having a level playing field between nuclear and other low carbon sources. And at the end of the day, importantly, competitiveness, as I was saying, will be an important topic to be tackled. Next slide, please. And yeah. That being said, we are not there yet. There are still a lot of threats, politically speaking, and we try to put some here. It's for now, there is clearly this 2030 target, minus 65%, will be absolutely very difficult to achieve. And the next Commission will have to tackle this because they will be the Commission in charge during all the rest of the period that runs up until 2030. And this minus 55% will have a relative check on it. Will it be doable or not? It's something that will be known during the next Commission. And they will have to find some solution if it proves that the current policy are not going to meet the objectives. The low carbon hydrogen is a topic we need to table again. For now, it's only about green hydrogen. EU funds, most of the funds today are not open for nuclear. We need to reopen this if we can. The question of how we treat anti-nuclear voices, the question of how this industry control its cost and its schedule will have to be addressed as well. And then I shouldn't have mentioned this before, but 2040 will be the next intermediate target before the net zero in 2050. We'll have to see a better role on nuclear for 2040 in the European Commission scenarios. For now, it's not the case. It's something we need to address for ourselves. And then the last slides that I will not comment too much. Can you go to, yeah. This is a list of the EU funds I was mentioning, or the financial scheme. Not trying to go into the detail of this slide, which is a bit packed. Just to let you know that taxonomy is a file which should be revised next year. Maybe we'll manage, and maybe we'll try to get nuclear treated as not anymore a transitional source of energy, but more as a solution for the future. InvestEU, we should have nuclear be backed on that. Just Transition Fund today is not open for nuclear. We should try to change this. European Euratom Research Program, we should try and find a way to expand the budget. And the European Investment Bank, we should have nuclear projects considered by this bank moving ahead. So I will stop here. Sorry for the technical issues we have had. And
thank you
Valérie.
very much, Yves. So there are many questions. So I'd like us to remind you the way to ask the questions. So we don't take hands. We take questions in writing that you can ask through Slido. If you don't have Slido, you can access through the link in the conversation. So the first question is actually on the European Investment Bank. The president seems to be reluctant to finance nuclear so far. So is there any institutional change in its governance that can be done in the current state of affairs for the next mandate?
This is a tricky question. Something we've seen a lot, the nuclear alliance countries tabling this. So I think this is something which there is a very good awareness among countries like France or the Czech Republic and others that EIB will support will be absolutely essential. The new president of EIB is, even if she's from Spain, made some positive statement on nuclear, saying that nuclear should be back as one source of energy to be properly financed by them. That being said, we know that there will be some reluctance from some governments. There are governments who are representing some anti-nuclear countries, and it will not be an easy task to get them change their mind. So I think we have to see this as something that will take some time. There will be the policies of EIB will have to change over the time. We need to put some projects on the pipeline and see how it goes.
Okay, thank you. What is the process? I have several questions actually on this topic of the EU target, right? So either a question of whether we can reach the target of at least 55% of less emissions by 2030. And also questions about how we can make sure that, what is the process EU is using to make sure the targets are right, whether it's on hydrogen, low carbon here, whether these targets are realistic or not.
But the targets are not always realistic. I was mentioning hydrogen, which for me is a typical unrealistic target, to be honest. It's also targets also a result of some political pressure from some countries, from some lobbies, from different organizations. The objective clearly is to get to net zero, and then the issue is how we can get there. We know that in many cases, so hydrogen is one example, but in many cases we see, for example, CCS as the way to get the figures right. Even we know that CCS up until now and for the last 25 years have been a failure. We've never really managed to develop CCS for now. So, and each time this CCS comes back to the table, because if you rule out the utilization of nuclear, then you have to find a way. And the CCS comes a little bit like as a fairy stick. You put CCS on the table, and then it solves all your equations. So I think it's talking about realism of targets. I believe this issue is a little bit here. And when I say 2030 reality check during the next commission, for me, it's part of that. Are the policies we have currently right or not? Or should they be more pragmatic? My personal view is they should be much more pragmatic and allow any solution to be proposed, including nuclear. And I think we see more and more people who are aware of this and try to start to acknowledge this fact.
Thank you very much, Yves. So you talked a lot about industrial competitiveness being at the top of the agenda for the next mandate. So what can be done on that within the existing treaties, right? And same question, is there a possible shift, or do you see a shift from competition policy, the current competition policy, into a more, industry-focused policy in the European Commission?
I cannot say it's an easy thing, because first of all, we have to be aware that the views on different countries are different. You have different perspectives, particularly when we start talking about state aid, so support from sectorial support are very often becoming big words in the EU discussions, which they are, by the way. Clearly there's this question of what is reasonable support. Does it make sense to support some industry or not? Is still a tricky matter. I think on the contrary, I don't think there is any more room for placency, for complacency. We've seen, so Europe has been very candid in many cases. For me, the typical example here is the solar industry. Solar industry has been killed, literally killed by some very aggressive commercial policies from some countries. We've seen in the past, and then there is today, the result is there is no solar industry at all. So then the question of how you tackle, integrate in your decision making the question of sovereignty is essential. I'm not saying it's an easy task because there are plenty of applications. The only thing I can say is during the next commission, this question of the European industry losing ground compared to others will have to be tackled. I don't exactly know what will be the outcome. The cost of energy is clearly part of it. It's difficult to compete in Europe with the US, who have benefits from shale gas at a very low price. And today in Europe, energy is very expensive, very expensive. So I'm not giving a solution here, but I'm just saying a little bit, trying to explain a bit the mindset we have on that.
Thank you very much. A question on skills. You mentioned that we had 1 million employees, I think, in the nuclear industry in Europe. And so what can be done practically at the EU level on developing skills? What can be expected?
So with this skill here, I'm going to talk about nuclear essentially, but the skill issue is obviously an issue for many sectors. We're talking about skill issues on airspace, on the digital, many aspects. So this is not a very specific issue of the nuclear industry per se, where the issue is much more stringent for us is the fact that we haven't built a serious program of new build for ages. So we have to start again, and we have to rebuild our capacity. Here I'm really talking about capacity and not capability, because I think capability somehow is here. But the capacity means that we have to, instead of having 100 good engineers doing a specific task, we need to have 1,000. So this is where we need to expand much more the volume of resources we have. So there are no miracle here. We need to attract talents. We need to find with the education and training community has to respond properly to what the industry needs in terms of skills. What are the particular strategic skills we need to reinforce? So, for example, in France, there was this debate on welders, but it can be the same debate elsewhere, or something the same idea. We have to work on the skill program at EU level. We have to start defining better what are the needs of the industry and how to address those. That is the reason why at Nucleareurope we call for the expansion at EU level of some good practices we've seen at national level. We could have in mind what has been done in Finland, but also in France with the match program. So those are a good example, good practices that need to be expanded elsewhere. So that we have in a few years from now a full picture on the projection needs for engineers, technicians, and this level of expertise that will be needed in the years to come.
Great. How can you explain that in some countries there's a good political support from SMRs, while these countries are opposed to large nuclear reactors?
There are different aspects. First, it depends a little bit of the country's history when it comes to nuclear. For countries which have no nuclear past, it's easier to tackle SMRs and also advanced reactors because it's seen as a little bit like a new perspective. For countries like Sweden, for example, they started saying we only need SMRs as new build, but now they're considering large reactors as well. So I don't think everything is frozen for forever. The size of the country obviously is an important matter. Let's take Estonia. I don't see any room for an EPR in Estonia. It's a much too small country. So this is where SMRs make sense. For larger countries, I think we'll need both large reactors because at the end of the day, you need to entertain a fleet as a base load, and SMRs addressing some specific issues.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So how political changes we are expecting could impact nuclear power?
So first of all, nuclear power, there is still the support obviously today we have across Europe is really comes from first from the public itself. I think it's important to highlight this. And in many countries, we've seen the support from the public growing before the support of the politicians themselves. So it's really starting that something that has started in many cases from the grass, if I can put it like this, from the people themselves. The expectations are high. We shouldn't deny the fact that in any case, it could remain fragile. If nuclear, so obviously there are an accident somewhere, but beyond this, if there is some disappointment from the public on the capacity of industry to meet the challenges. So I believe it's important to have this in mind because we are expecting now to meet the promises, and the promises being capable of addressing the decarbonization challenge. So how far we'll be able to do that? It's a question. Hopefully that will properly be answered, but we'll see. And then I forgot the question, by the way, but
no, the question was about the political changes that we expect.
Yeah, and political changes. So politicians react to what they perceive as a public opinion, clearly, because they're politicians. Then the next commission will see what it will be the outcome. I explained a bit before. This very difficult game of designing commissioners from different countries, deciding who should take which position. We hope that Commissioner for Energy and Climate will be supportive. We shall see. We see some commissioners today. We already are obviously running for another term and trying to position themselves. Here I have in mind Commissioner Šefčovič, for example, who has recently said very positive things on nuclear, and he's made it very clear that he wants to, he's ready to run for another term.
Okay, there was a question on the US push in Europe because they're very active on your projects. And also on the Phoenix program that they have to promote as well, SMRs. So how can Europe be active to make sure that the local, industrial capabilities in nuclear having a fair game, right, in Europe?
Yeah, good question. So yes, Just Transition Fund, I was explaining, unfortunately, nuclear is banned from that. And then with Americans, with their Phoenix program, somehow fill a gap which has been created by the Europeans themselves. So the mistake was made by European decision makers. As I was explaining before, it's a file that may be reopened. So we'll see what comes out of that. Regarding the Americans in general in Europe, but to be very clear on that, there is no market in Europe, in the US today for new nuclear. So that's the problem those companies are facing. There was one project in the IDEO for NuScale. This project was cancelled a few months ago. Today in US, there is 3, or maybe someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't see any serious prospect. So the only prospects that exist today for American nuclear industry are European ones. Hence, the position, the commercial position they take. Yeah, and I cannot say exactly what's going to happen. The only thing we as Nucleareurope defend is clearly that any design, even from abroad, from Europe, should benefit to European industry. So we really think that supply chain, European nuclear supply chain should be used extensively, even for designs which are not European designs. Because of the skills, because of the localization logic, we really think it is what should be aimed at.
Okay, so I have a similar question, but specifically on the Industrial Alliance for Small Reactors, right? What about the status, the statute, sorry, I can't pronounce well, of the Industrial Alliance? Will they favor the interest of foreign actors? I think we draw from the experience of the Solar Industrial Alliance.
Yeah. So for now, where we stand on this Industrial Alliance, so we received more than 300 applications. The General Assembly of the Alliance, the first General Assembly should happen on the 29th of May. This is the date we've heard, 13th, 29th, and 30th of May. Here we should, something that should be highlighted is the fact that you have two streams, two tracks. One track is really the constitution of technical working groups. And this will, I believe this is somehow the easy part, because we'll decide what were the top technical working group we are going to start first, who's going to participate to each technical working group. So this is a task which is already being tackled by the Secretariat of the Industrial Alliance. The trickiest part is the question of what will be the project that would be eligible under the Alliance. The project will have to be assessed, and here we are going to consider what has been written in the terms of reference of the Alliance. And clearly, the project will have to. There will be some needs for commitments on, for example, intellectual property localization.
Okay.
So here we still have to go into the detail of the criteria to be applied, but based on what was agreed and what was discussed, presented in the terms of reference. So we need to expand from that.
Okay. Great. So I think we're finished. It's 1 o'clock. So thank you very much, Yves. Thank you very much, everyone, for your questions. So the webinar will be available on replay very soon. And I wish you a very good day and very good elections in your countries. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Valérie.